Yeah, as I just mentioned, this visit from Rubio is coming at a time when Israel is ramping up its ground offensive in Gaza. Rubio says this visit is a moment to talk about the future. Let's listen to this.
We just want to know what comes next. How do we get the 48 hostages out? What's the plan to defeat Hamas? So we can get to the next phase.
Yeah, we don't always know the details, but do you think that there is a clear plan to a hostage and ceasefire deal? What do you think is going to come next with this?
Well, it's difficult to say. This is not the first time we've heard words about a deal on trying to get hostages, a ceasefire, but those agreements never seem to quite materialize. This is an interesting moment for the United States and Israel. I mean, the friendship between the two countries is unquestioned. But you can hear in Secretary Rubio's tone there that he really does want to hear what is the plan to kind of wrap this all up and move on to the next phase. And President Trump was clearly annoyed with Mr. Netanyahu over the strikes in Qatar, which he thought were wrongly done. And as he said, the right target, but the wrong place, not inside Qatar. So there is some tension. It's not going to fundamentally affect the friendship, but it is a moment of tension between the two countries as our interests start to diverge. We really want this war wrapped up so we can kind of move on to the next thing. Mr. Netanyahu seems to think he has more to do inside Gaza.
Yeah, and the international community has been critical of Israel's handling of the war, as we've been reporting, particularly surrounding the flow of food and aid into Gaza, right? So, do you think that the public's erosion of support for Israel has any impact? And if it does have an impact, how big?
Well, this certainly is something that Israel and its friends have to be concerned about. There are several European countries, we can think of Ireland and Spain, that have become fairly overtly hostile towards the Israelis. And that comes also with a softening of support in the United States. Israel is not as popular in the United States as it was 3 or 4 years ago due to the conduct of the Gaza war. You can agree or disagree with the conduct of the war, that it has made Israel much more unpopular, both internationally and in the United States, is pretty indisputable. So I think that's also part of what the President Trump and the Secretary are trying to do. Look, wrap this up so you don't do further damage to your international profile.
Right. Also, we're taking a look at this other story. In March, a Tufts student had her visa stripped for what a court found out was because of her opinion piece that was critical of Israel. Now, civil liberties advocates say a new bill could grant Secretary Rubio the power to revoke the passports of American citizens on similar grounds. So when we take a look at that, what do you think the implications of that could be?
Well, student visas are one thing. We have a broad latitude in who we allow to come to this country to study. And so if you're doing something in this country that we think, if you'd been upfront about that in the first place, we wouldn't have given you a visa, and then revoking that visa is well within our parameters. Revoking passports is a horse of a different color, and I think ultimately the courts will decide what is and is not appropriate in those cases.
And before I let you go, I've got one more for you. I want to ask you about President Trump's recent comments about Russia. The president was posting this on Trump Truth Social, saying, quote, "I am ready to do major sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing. And when all NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia, I am ready to, quote, go when you are. Just say when." So we've got that out there on social media. Do you think this could bring Russia to the table to strike a peace deal with Ukraine? Will it work? What do you think?
Well, perhaps. I mean, what President Trump is saying there makes, radical sense. We're perfectly willing to put more restrictions on the Russians, and sanctions always come at a cost to the sanctioning country as well. We can't buy cheap stuff because we're sanctioning them. They say, well, let's share the pain. If I'm going to have the United States take another step to further tighten sanctions on Russia, why don't you stop buying their oil first? Sounds like a pretty common sense first step to me.
All right, we'll see where it goes from here. Doug Ollivant, Senior Fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute and former NSC Director. Really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.